Well, can you tell me more about how you developed the skill? I mean, over the years, the technical skill of painting.
Yeah, well, that's a whole question unto itself, and there's always. I mean, I wasn't trained in an academy, and I've always had a debate in my head what it would be like, because when the more austere and established schooling that you have, the more of a challenge, on the other hand, it is to develop your own voice, your own, thing. So a lot of people who come through such training don't ever really feel the ability to be as free as I've been. My development has been much more organic. In that, yes, I went to a art high school, which was music and art at the time, which is now LaGuardia and part of Lincoln Center, but at the time it was in Harlem by City College. But I dropped out after a year. I had a kind of an alternative, origins in my approach to life. I went to India when I was 16. I hitchhiked across the country. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18. I worked for the Bronx General Post Office. I wound up going for a year to the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. And what was great was their first year program was all elective. So I just took studio classes, printmaking, art history, which I love, and started to have my first exposure to working from the model. Having some different kinds of instruction. I had a wonderful teacher named Kajiaso, Japanese man, but his approach was very cryptic. I mean, it wasn't, a traditional form. So I've never had the traditional training. Then I thought, they only paid for my tuition 1 year. I don't need to bother with my review boards or anything. A few years later, I thought I was going to be going to paint in New Orleans, actually. Had a friend who said, you could paint in the French Quarter and live that lifestyle. I thought that would be great. That didn't wind up to happen, and I wound up back in New York, and I didn't know what to do, so I enrolled at the School of Visual Arts, and I got a full scholarship. I wound up going for 3 years at School of Visual Arts, and got my Bachelor of Fine Arts. So what was great was that, like, the 4th year program, you have a studio, and you have all these instructors visiting you and giving you feedback. And they also have a lot of different departments, so I learned more printmaking. I took an etching class. I was doing silk screening. I had a class that was 6 hours working from the model. So most of my learning was from repetition. The school helped facilitate that. I have a real work ethic in my approach to painting, because, like, when I worked for the post office on this machine where a letter went by every second and I had to hit out the zip code from 11 at night till 7 in the morning, I thought if I could quantify the effort that I'm putting into this and put it into something creative, I could, the world, it could be my oyster. So for years I kept a record of the number of hours I would paint every day. And if I painted less one day, I'd make up for it. By the end of the week, I would add hours, because I saw it as that you got to clock in the hours. Basically, the two things that I've learned the most from have been nature, because I've had the opportunity to work out in the world and really tune into light and color and form and everything, and then my love of great art and always wanting to know more about the history of art. I've been very fortunate, because I'm not one of these artists who's stuck in their little space, and only comes out, to get some, rays of the sun so they can go back in or whatever. I'm a social person. I have been involved in community activities with community organizations. I teach also, and then I work out in the world. So I'm very fortunate, and so I'm always open to the feedback. And what's been wonderful recently is having a great exposure to a greater range of folks, and then having people who really respond to the kind of work I've been doing for 30 years, which is always a good thing.